Hi, folks. Before we jump into the discussion of theology and revelation, I wanted to cover a few more topics on a wave-based reality. And they relate to paranormal abilities, or what I call spiritual abilities, because that's one of the things that people can't explain in a particle-based reality is how can people have clairvoyance or be able to do remote viewing or have out-of-body experiences? People write them off because they say it's impossible to do in a particle-based reality, and that's correct. And conventional science can't prove it because it's not based on conventional science. I say it's based on a wave-based reality, a wave-based science. So I wanted to discuss these things so you were aware of them. Again, this is all subjective. It depends on this neutron decay experiment or some other similar experiment that would tip the needle, move the needle between a particle-based reality and a wave-based reality. So it's all subjective. No need to discuss it unless we do this other experiment first that would indicate that a particle-based reality may not be the way to go. It may be a wave-based reality instead. So let's jump into it. What you'll see first is this chart. And it's from my book. Let me put that up. Christianity from a Spiritual Perspective. You'll see these charts in the next few episodes. They're also from my book as well. But this one shows you the different, what I call spiritual abilities that are available in the different dimensions. Because as you move up from a denser dimension to a less dense dimension, and even to a spiritual dimension, you have less and less ability to sense things through your five senses. And so that's a good question to ask is, why do you have these paranormal abilities or spiritual abilities? And it's because that's the way spirits communicate, travel, and manipulate energy. And that's why you have them. Some people can access them even while they're in their physical body. And that's what I say up here. And this was actually taught 100 years ago, is how to access your spiritual abilities in non-physical dimensions while maintaining waking consciousness. You could have people who do channeling. They go into a trance, they say things and do things, and then they come out of the trance and they don't remember things. They aren't maintaining waking consciousness. But if you have someone who does remote viewing or who does clairvoyance, and they can tell you things, or even a medium who can, tell you things about communications with people in other dimensions, they are able to maintain their waking consciousness and tap into some of these abilities. So I won't go into this chart. I know that you guys will stop the video and look at it, but you can see it in my book. Another thing that you can look at, and again, it's in my book too, is a discussion of communications into different dimensions. And this is specifically into the astral dimension, but it answers a question from the Bible, from the Hebrew Bible in Deuteronomy and Leviticus, where it was talking about mediums and how there was a prohibition on talking to mediums, and that the Israelites or the Jews should talk to prophets instead. And here's an explanation for that, is that the development of consciousness for people back then, 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, was not as great. So when they were using their chakras, and these chakras align with 7 different layers in the astral dimension, they were down in these lower chakras. So when they would communicate with beings in the astral dimension, they would be communicating with beings in these lower chakras, which is not where all the prophets and the deities are. The prophets and deities are up in the higher chakras. And actually, when you get into this yellow that the prophets could get into, that's where you channel. Channeling is for communication with spiritual beings who don't have a body, and they're more in the mental and the causal dimensions. Mediumship is for communication with people in the astral dimension who have a physical body in that dimension. So that's the difference between those, but also the reason why there was a prohibition against using mediums was because of their lower level of consciousness versus the level of consciousness of prophets, who could use their spiritual abilities to communicate into higher dimensions and communicate with the deities. So you can stop the video and look at this chart too. And I hope this will give you some extra insight into a wave-based reality.